What is going on, everyone? Scrap Metal back here today. I'm going to be bringing you a new series. It is called LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, How It Should Have Went. So I'm going to review every episode and how the gameplay went, and I'm going to talk about the way I think it should have went, with levels, all that stuff, just cutscenes, the way things were displayed, everything important like that. So let's just get straight into this new series. I'm obviously going to be starting with the Phantom Menace and working my way up to episode 9. So let's get straight into it. Before I start, I'd like this to be known about how I think things should work. Even during hub levels, you will not have the option to travel to other planets or switch to other characters. It would remain locked to only things that are in the story. If you would want to do some free roam before finishing an episode, you could head to the main menu and select Galaxy Free Roam. If you select an episode to play in, you can only go with the story. And finally, if you click on an episode on the menu after you've completed it, you could replay all the events in that episode, including hub levels. Now on to the Phantom Menace. The episode starts with the original cutscene from the unfinished Skywalker Saga. The pre-level then starts by flying in the Radiant 7 to the Trade Federation ship. As you continue the story, it then goes into a cutscene of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan exiting the ship and meeting TC-14. The playable characters for this sequence are Qui-Gon Jinn Cape and Padawan Obi-Wan Cape. You'll then have to follow TC-14 to the negotiations room. It will then transition to a cutscene of the Radiant 7 getting blown up, and then Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan getting gassed, and them drawing their sabers. You will then have to fight your way through the hallway of security battle droids and some droidicas, and you will sneak your way into the multi-troop transport. It will then transition to a cutscene of the ships landing in the Naboo forest, and the same one of Qui-Gon rescuing Jar Jar and his head getting banged on the transport. From there, the same events from the unfinished Skywalker Saga will take place up until you are leaving Naboo with Queen Amidala aboard your ship. A cutscene will then play as you are heading into Naboo space. The cutscene will show Jar Jar saying, "Hello, boys," to the astromech droids and the ship being fired upon by the Separatists and the droids heading out to repair the ship. It will then show 2 out of the 4 droids being blasted off the ship. A sequence will then start. The playable characters for the sub-level sequence are R2-D2 and R2-R9. You will start by having to solve 2 of those astromech puzzles. They would both be longer puzzles since this is a challenge and you will have a certain time limit to do it in. If you do not complete the puzzles within the time limit, a cutscene will play of the ship being shot down by the Separatists. If you solve the puzzles within the time limit, you'll then quickly have to mash a few buttons, and it would transition into a cutscene of R2-R9 getting blown off the ship and R2-D2 doing a celebration. The cutscene would then show R2 getting complimented by the Queen, and then it would show the hyperdrive failing, and the ship only being able to make it to Tatooine. When the ship comes out of hyperspace, you will manually have to select Mos Espa. You would still land farther out for the sake of the story. That wouldn't happen if you selected Mos Espa in free roam. Once you land, a cutscene will play of Qui-Gon, Jar Jar, R2, and Padme leaving the ship and heading into town. It will then transition into a hub level of you finding a new hyperdrive in Mos Espa. Playable characters for this hub mission are Qui-Gon Poncho, Padme Tatooine, Jar Jar Binks, and R2-D2. You will then have to ask around where to find a new hyperdrive when you are directed into Watto's shop and a cutscene plays. This cutscene shows Qui-Gon asking Watto for the parts he needs and Watto calling Anakin in to watch the shop while he shows Qui-Gon the parts he needs. Anakin then asks Padme if she was an angel and he introduces himself and all that. Qui-Gon then offers Watto 20,000 Republic credits, but Watto declines. Qui-Gon, Padme, and Jar Jar and R2 would then exit the shop where Jar Jar gets himself into some trouble with Sebulba. Anakin then saves him and meets Qui-Gon. A sandstorm is approaching. It would then transition to a hub mission of Qui-Gon, Jar Jar, Padme, and R2 following Anakin to his home. When you would arrive at his home, another cutscene would play. The cutscene would show Anakin introducing his new friends to Shmi, and C-3PO meets R2 for the first time. And they would have dinner, and Anakin talks about pod racing and how he could possibly win them the money to fix their broken hyperdrive. After the cutscene, it would then transition to a hub sequence of you traveling to Watto's shop to speak to him about the race. Playable characters for this sequence are Qui-Gon Poncho, Padme Tatooine, Jar Jar Binks, and R2-D2. The hub level is you traveling to Watto's shop. Along the way, Padme talks about how she was unsure about getting help from a young boy. Once you make it to Watto's shop, a cutscene plays of Qui-Gon telling Watto that he'd like to sponsor Anakin in the race. He then offers his ship as an entry fee. Qui-Gon tells Watto how he got the pod racer, then they negotiate and finally come to a deal. Qui-Gon then contacts Obi-Wan about his plan and how he sees something in Anakin. After the cutscene, another hub level begins of you getting Anakin's pod racer ready. The playable characters for this hub level are young Anakin Skywalker, Qui-Gon Poncho, Padme Tatooine, Jar Jar Binks, R2-D2, and C-3PO Episode 1. There will be a few puzzles you have to solve, and you would need to build certain things to get it running, like from a classic LEGO game. After you complete the puzzles, a cutscene will play which would show the pod racer starting up and everyone celebrating. It would then transition to night, and it would show Qui-Gon sending Anakin's blood sample to Obi-Wan to analyze it for midi-chlorians. It would then transition to early morning where it would show Darth Maul's ship landing and him sending out 3 droids to find the Queen. It would then transition to another hub level. This would be traveling to the pits of Boonta Eve. The playable characters for this hub level are Qui-Gon Poncho and Jar Jar Binks. Once you make your way over to the pits of Boonta Eve, it will transition to a cutscene of Qui-Gon playing a game of chance to free Anakin from Watto if he won the race. It would then transition to the level called the Boonta Eve Classic. The playable vehicle for this level is Anakin's pod. The second player will be in charge of repairing the pod, which I will get more into as I'm explaining the level. The level would start with the same cutscene from the unfinished Skywalker Saga. When the pod race would start, Anakin's pod wouldn't start, so you would have to mash many buttons to quickly get going. I just want to clarify, for 2 players, the first player would be in charge of piloting the pod, while the second player would be in charge of mashing all the buttons. If you are playing single player, then that player has both jobs. Once you would get the pod running, you'd take off into your first lap, which would be easy with no problems along the way. The second lap is when things get a bit challenging. First, a pod racer would crash, causing a massive explosion, and you would need to dodge debris that could damage your pod or slow you down. Tusken Raiders would then begin to fire at the racers. You would need to avoid these shots as they would deal serious damage to your pod and slow you down quite a bit. The third and final lap is the most challenging. You would be neck and neck with Saboba. Saboba would be crashing into your pod and you have to mash multiple buttons quickly in order to get him off. If you do not mash the buttons in time, he will crash your pod out and you will lose the race. He would continue to repeat this throughout the lap until you got to the very ending where you'd finally run him off the race. The same celebration from the original unfinished Skywalker Saga would play, except this one would be a bit extended. After celebrating that Anakin won the race, Qui-Gon would then reveal to him that he has been freed from slavery. Qui-Gon then invites him to go with him to the Jedi Temple, and he says goodbye to his mom and 3PO and all of that. The level then ends. The characters and vehicles you would have unlocked are young Anakin Skywalker in his pod racer helmet, Chira, Rats Tyrell, Odie Mandrill, Anakin's pod racer, Saboba's pod racer, Rats Tyrell's pod racer, and Odie Mandrill's pod racer. Another hub level then starts. The playable characters for this hub level are young Anakin Skywalker, Qui-Gon Poncho, Padme Tatooine, Jar Jar Binks, and R2-D2. Once you make it out of Mos Espa, you travel to the ship on the outskirts. Once you are a couple meters from your ship, a cutscene will play of Darth Maul jumping off his speeder and drawing his saber. It will then transfer to a sequence of you fighting Darth Maul as Qui-Gon, and the objective for the other players would be to alert others in the ship to take off. After depleting 1 full bar of health from Darth Maul, you are quickly to press a button allowing you to jump onto the ship, which will trigger the same cutscene of Sidious talking to Maul in the unfinished Skywalker Saga. It will then transition to you flying as the J-Type 327 Nubian Royal Starship. You will have to select the Coruscant Federal District as your destination. Once you land there, the same events from the unfinished Skywalker Saga will take place up until you are on level 4 fighting with the Gungans. The only thing that changed within that time frame would be a longer Senate meeting because the one in the unfinished TSS was way too short. After Maul is killed, the same hub mission will take place right before level 4. When you start the level, the playable characters will be Jar Jar Binks, Captain Tarpals, and a Gungan warrior. The level will start the same way by having you defend the shields by defeating droids. The same sequence of you shooting waves of droids with the cannon will also take place. After you eliminate the waves of droids with the cannon, droids will then start to push their way into the shields. Your cannon will then be destroyed and you will be forced to fight them with your weapons. It would be the same as eliminating waves of droids like in LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars. After a few minutes of defeating waves of droids, there are too many and a cutscene plays of the Gungans surrendering. The same events from the unfinished Skywalker Saga will take place up until the very ending of the episode. The only difference would be a cutscene showing of the Jedi burning Qui-Gon's body, as I think that is an essential moment to watch in this episode. After that, the same ending cutscene would play and episode 1 would end. So that is how I think the events of episode 1 should have played out in this game. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of the new series. If you did, please leave a like. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!